I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
OK, you're welcome along to the football show. So the latest is that Manchester United are still trailing Barcelona by 1-0. 48 minutes on the clock. Officially a Luke Shaw own goal, although Luis Suarez had a heavy hand to play in it. And meanwhile in Amsterdam, 50 minutes on the clock, Cristiano Ronaldo did put Juventus 1-0 up in 45 minutes. And within a minute, Ajax had equalised. David Neres with the equaliser. So that is where we stand. Kieran Cunningham, chief sports writer with the Irish Daily Star, still with us. You've been watching this game, still Barcelona on top in the main?
Yeah, very much so. Like the second half's only three and a half minutes old, but they utterly dominated. So they nearly over the 45 minutes, between 70 and 80% possession. The chances they should be 2-0 up. Coutinho had a great chance to Hay, made a fine save, but doesn't look good for Ollie at the wheel at the moment now.
No, it doesn't. So if you're just tuning in, then the first hour of the show in its totality was dedicated to this afternoon's Oireachtas Committee. We played close to 15, 16 reasonably long clips from the 6-7 hours of the day. It felt like 17 hours, but it was just the 6 or 7, I assure you. So if you're looking to podcast that, it's in the Football Show podcast. You'll be able to find it if you're podcasting this discussion right beneath it. So feel free to do that. It will give you a really good sense of the day. And to that end, for more thoughts, we're joined by the chair of the committee, Fergus O'Dowd, in studio.
Hi.
Thank you for coming in. I appreciate it. It has been a long day and it's far from over yet. There's huge interest in this, I'm sure you've realised.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just to give people who are tuning in now a sense of the day, in short, this is a real short version, but John Delaney eventually read out a prepared statement. They had to go off in a private session because it was the first they knew of his prepared statement. And he was unable to talk about the loan, the €100,000 loan, or indeed his role as CEO for the previous 14 years. This, it seemed, came as news to the committee, and then the following 6-7 hours progressed. Donald Conway, the FAI president, did the bulk of the talking. John Delaney spoke once or twice, but effectively not really. He said, legally, I'm precluded from answering the vast majority of questions that came his way. Just to give you a sense maybe of the frustration in the room, here is towards the end, this was just before 6 o'clock. This is Ruth Coppinger, as Fergus O'Dowd was going around getting final thoughts from various TDs and senators. This was Ruth Coppinger's feeling on how the afternoon had been spent.
Today's proceedings are going to reaffirm people's cynicism about the political process and about the FAI. It doesn't give me any pleasure to say that I've family members who've been connected with the FAI, but you've come along here today armed with lawyers and legal advice.
We did not bring legal advice.
I was just about, well, you obviously got legal advice before you came here, and you've given the most minimal answers that fit in with that.
Well,
but we've also...
They're entitled to do that.
Yeah, they're entitled to do it, and I was just about to say that...
yes, but we got legal advice as well.
That it would appear Mr. Delaney, like he's here physically, so he's covered himself in that way, but it's Hamlet without the prince, because he hasn't answered any of the questions that people outside of this room would have wanted to be answered. And I hope journalists and I hope the general public take note of how toothless the Parliament has become because of legal threats. Now, the board was fooled or misled by a number of people on the board who never told them about these transactions and about the shortfall. And Sporting Ireland also had information hidden from it by the FAI, because they did ask, they told us in 2017, and they were told all was well at that time. And it seems that the final thing I'd say, the board has moved Mr. Delaney aside because of his connection to UEFA. They're willing to keep him, and they've created a role solely for one person. Nobody else need apply, and it's a position that's still, quite well paid. As I said, it's similar to the prize money for the entire Irish League.
O'Brien, I have to take Deputy O'Brien.
So I just think that this has been very frustrating for a lot of people, and
Deputy O'Brien,
changes need to be made.
Ruth Coppinger there, and I would be safe enough in saying that was the predominant sentiment in the room, bar a few exceptions, including Michael Healy-Rae, who was incredibly impressed with John Delaney, I felt. So, when did you realise, Fergus, that John Delaney had brought a prepared statement with him?
When he said, when we got the statement, that he had a statement to read, and that was a surprise for us.
So in real time?
In real time, oh yeah, we didn't have a clue. I mean, the rule is, I know procedures are quaint at times, but on the Monday before the meeting, you usually get your prepared statements. That gives them time to get their thoughts together and us to do due diligence on them, to see if the issues are covered or whatever. So when he brought in the statement, it was, I wasn't going to let him read it without us reading it first. If there were issues that we wanted to address, just to know what he was going to say.
Do you, in all honesty, feel this was somewhat tactical, given that Donald Conway submitted his statement on the Monday as per the rules?
Yes, we assumed that was it.
It's a delaying tactic almost.
Well, it's not. I tell you, look, transparency, accountability, everything should be up front. There's no reason why it shouldn't be.
And he's been at Oireachtas committees before. He would be aware, I think.
Oh yeah, well, yes, Delaney would be. Yeah, he would have been there. But the point is, it's not about Delaney. It's about the process. It's about governance. It's about, regardless of who the boss is, what were the processes? What happened with the cheque? And we know we couldn't get to the bottom of that, but it's about process, and the issues around about, my whole point is that if Sport Ireland says, you guys, we're not funding you, that's hugely damaging, absolutely, to a whole lot of them.
Yeah.
And it's critical in assessment.
But from us looking from the outside, Fergus,
sure.
You're talking about the process is not about John Delaney, but he was the guy in charge for a long time, and he was the guy in charge when this happened. And it seems really odd that he's there, but he won't talk about what everybody wants to talk about.
Yeah.
And, he didn't have to be there. So why be there if you're not going to talk about it? And, in total, what did it last? Was it 6 or 7 hours in total?
It was, as you say, it felt like 17.
Yeah.
It was from 10 to 6,
Yeah. So he spoke in total for maybe, I'm not sure,
5 minutes
maybe 10 minutes or something. But but it was about skirting around the edge of topics. It wasn't about what people want to, and that's what I found most bizarre about the day. Do you find that strange? Because you've had a lot of experience of these committees.
Of course. Well, see, the problem is that the FAI is a private body. It's not a state organisation. They're not civil service, so we can't require them to come in, and then we can't require them to answer questions. If they say, I'm not answering that question, we have to accept that because we can't compel them to. So the problem was that that was the situation. We also had legal advice, as he had as well, because there's huge controversy, legal. It was a Supreme Court hearing last Monday about another case involving a hearing of a person. So we had to be very careful and conscious of due process in that.
Indeed, he cited that in his opening remarks. He was well aware of that.
He did.
Did it strike you as strange in any way that the legal advice not only precluded him from talking about the loan, which in some respects you might have anticipated, but also precluded him from talking about his 14 years as CEO? He's been in there before talking about his role as CEO. That he was able to come in and say, I can't talk about the loan, but I also can't talk about my previous 14 years running this association, but hey, anything else you want to ask me is fine. That struck me as surprising, I have to say.
Well, it shows the democratic process. If somebody comes before it in that status, you can't force them to do what...
And I love democracy, but did it strike you as surprising?
No, it doesn't work. I think the question, the point is, you could ask Delaney all those questions outside the room. You could go into the Dáil and say everything you wanted about Delaney or anybody else.
Sure.
But you can't do it in committee because of the due process that we're stuck with the remit that we have, and that is, in this case, only to deal with governance. But that excluded specifically his expenses, his wages, his whatever it was, or anybody else's. You can't ask those questions because it's not included in the list. So what we have to do is change our remit to the committee and change the law if necessary. But it's very unsatisfactory. But what you can say is that within the Oireachtas held them accountable in some respects. We did get answers to some questions, and next Tuesday we will have the Minister, Shane Ross, and Sport Ireland back in again to see where this is going now.
But sorry, Joe, isn't it a big problem, though, that these questions are never asked? Because at the AGM, You got into this earlier, yeah.
You seem to have to point that out to Donald Conway.
But the questions aren't asked about pensions and maybe credit cards and the salary and who decides. They're not asked. Journalists aren't allowed to ask them because they never rarely have any contact with John Delaney, and when they do, often it's very prescribed. Like say, you might say, we're only taking questions about Euro 2020 or whatever. So these are a lot of questions that people want asked, like how was such a huge salary or agreed, but there's no opportunity to ask them. And this is a body getting a lot of state funding. It's got 50 million in the last 10 years. I know it's a private body, but it's still the taxpayers pay for a lot of it.
There's no doubt about it, and young people will suffer now because the money is cut. But that doesn't impact on their attitude. In my view, is that they should go.
There was a dramatic moment, and we've played all these clips out earlier, so it's a pretty informed audience. 3 times you put it to Donald Conway, would they be willing, I think with the intention of appeasing the public and a show of goodwill, would they submit to a forensic audit?
Yeah.
Can you explain to me what's the difference between a forensic audit and a normal audit, and also your reaction when you had to ask 3 times, and even on the 3rd time, Donald Conway, by basically not addressing the question, said, absolutely not, no chance.
Well, so a forensic audit would be going through like every single bit of paper, looking at every single aspect, every count, every thought, every bit of it. You go through it in absolute, total, minute detail. So an ordinary audit would be, well, you'd accept the generic presentations and you would do due diligence, but a forensic audit means that you go through every damn thing. There's no hiding place for €1 out of place. So a forensic audit means you really put everything under the microscope, and that would bring transparency and accountability.
What was your reaction when you asked a 3rd time and got the answer you got?
Well, I was disappointed because like the thing is, that's what people want, but they're not giving us that. They're not giving us the accountability in the context of answering questions. And the point is that, as I said earlier on, like we've got to move this on. We've got to move it on, because if you look at what happened, and they're not the same, and I want to stress this, the Olympic Committee, the Irish Olympic Committee, and the way it was a few years ago, and look at it now, it's just fantastic now, because everybody is so happy. They're very happy with the way it's been run. They're very happy with the changes, and I think that's what people want in soccer.
Just a key question, sorry. What has happened since Friday and this week
I don't know.
Prompted Sport Ireland to take this serious step? And the general feeling everyone had on Tuesday when John Tracy was in with Kieran was they did not want to pull back the funding. They were acutely conscious that it would affect grassroots people. So something has happened.
I believe that, but what, I don't know.
Right, because you were trying to get into that today.
Yeah, Friday last they had a meeting. They agreed.
This is John Delaney, FAI.
and Sports Ireland. They agreed what they would agree. They would get access to the Mazars report. They would be able to contribute to the rules and the regulations that would apply to it. The generic outcomes they would expect, and they would have all of that.
Right,
and that was fine and dandy. And then
Monday
then.
Something happened Monday.
So something happened.
Yesterday, the news
yesterday. So I asked, they had 2 telephone contacts, that's all. But we'll have Sport Ireland in next week, and I'm going to ask them that question because I want to know.
Yes, and I presume they'll answer.
Yeah. Well, they have to answer because they're. Well, I mean, I'm not saying they don't want to answer. I did speak to John Tracy yesterday about all of this, and I just thought it was odd. We weren't informed of it either. Right. We found out. I heard it on the radio. I said, well, why didn't we know? So, in fairness, they had sent an email at 3:31, but the office that it went to wasn't manned for half an hour.
What did John Tracy say when you asked him why?
Well, he said there was no intention not telling us, but I felt I just wasn't happy with it. But we're not finished looking at all these issues. But obviously, I do accept him. I do trust him. I do think he's a very credible person. Yeah. But I'm not happy.
I was interested in the reference you made to the Olympic, the changes in the Olympic movement, Fergus, because. Across the board, the personnel's completely changed. It's completely different people in charge of it. They've even rebranded from Olympic Council of Ireland to Olympic Federation of Ireland. And I talked to Peter Sherrod, the CEO, about that, and he agreed with me that basically the OCI brand had become toxic, so they had to create a new brand. And I found it interesting at the end of the morning session today. You mentioned regime change.
Yes.
What do you mean by that? Do you think the FAI needs a completely new board?
I do.
And do you feel John Delaney has to go?
I do, absolutely.
Yeah.
I believe all of them should go.
Okay.
And I think they should go voluntarily. I think we shouldn't be pushed. They should say, look, let's have a transition. Let's appoint another, about to appoint a new chief executive officer, bring in Sports Ireland or other people, outside people in to appoint the best person, and then go from there. Like, I mean, I don't think they should sit around. I know from talking to people, listening to them, they want it done. They want it done now, and that's it.
This is the kind
that's the public will, anyway.
Yeah, what you've just said there, that's the kind of clip that's going to be used on news headlines here on the station over the next 24 hours, I would presume. Just expand on that again. Explain why you think the entire board should go and John Delaney should go as well.
Well, I think the position is that, as you say, like you have a regime is probably, it gives a strange idea, but if you have a status, like there's a book and it's out of date and the cover doesn't, you don't get new people looking at it. You've got to change the whole thing. You've got to change what's outside and inside. And I think I know my heart and soul when you want real change, just go. And a whole new younger people, new ideas. There's a question about gender balance. There's all those issues are there. Now the FAI do lots of very good things, particularly in relation to, racism and disadvantaged communities. But like a new generation take over.
And what about
why not? And why shouldn't they take over? It's time.
One of the arguments made today was that there's been 3 or 4 new board members in the last few years.
Yes.
And also that nobody has John Delaney's contacts in UEFA and FIFA. Do you put much store in that?
Well, I mean, people, they put a lot of store in it, and I don't know. Obviously, clearly, he's a very influential man internationally, but like, I don't know. But I have a different. My answer to that is a sort of strange thing. Even though the heaven falls, justice must be done, as I said. You have. So let's have a clean out. Let's have a change, and let's live with it.
Because I got the sense that you and others don't feel that we can feel comfortable that taxpayers' money is going into the organisation in its current guise.
No, it's not going in because there isn't accountability, and the Sports Ireland are not happy. So I'm not happy, and therefore that. And the other point is, and I raised this just by way of a comment. Like, what about the sponsors? If you're a corporate sponsor, you've got a board, you've got corporate accountability, responsibility, and how are you going to say to your shareholders, "We're going to back these guys," even though the government won't?
Yeah.
That's a serious issue. So I think if you can, the pressure of sponsors, of the government, of Sports Ireland, of you guys, of the public, to bring about change. Now, I don't know enough about the internal machinations in clubs, and I know people fight for positions and they get nominated and that, but like you guys out there, look, just be alert, get active, get out there, do the business.
Sponsors.
I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, sponsors seem to be monitoring the situation.
I'm sure they are.
Media are on the case, but they've been kind of on that case for a while now.
Yeah.
The grassroots seem to support John Delaney in a massive way. I think Michael Healy-Rae voiced large enough contingent. So I guess it may actually, in real terms, come down to Sport Ireland's power and government power. So to that end, what can happen? So say the funding is suspended indefinitely. I presume Sport Ireland don't have the power to dismiss John Delaney or anybody on that board?
They don't, no. They pay the money, 2.9 million, and that's it. But they need to be reassured on the books and the accounts. They do an audit on the money that they give.
Yeah.
But where the difference arose was the obligation is on the FAI to tell Sport Ireland if there's a problem with their money, and they didn't.
Just to interrupt, because I know you have to go quickly, and I want to let you go because you have a prior engagement. So is it conceivable that the FAI will say, well, we've got our Grant Thornton report, we're happy with it, Mazars shockingly says everything is A-OK, Sport Ireland remain unhappy with that and withhold funding, and is it possible, there are many different possibilities, is it possible that the FAI could say, well, OK, Sport Ireland, we won't have your funding, we're sorry about that, we'd like you to come back to us, we'll work to improve the relationship. In the meantime, which could be a year, 2, 3 years, we, with our 50 million turnover, will survive without your funding.
Yeah.
Fergus, we love your Oireachtas Committee. We're your best friends. We'll come and see you again soon. But ultimately, there's not much you can do either. Is there a possibility that the FAI can say, sorry, Sport Ireland, sorry, government, we're ploughing on here, we'll use our own money, our own turnover, and we have faith in ourselves as a board. Is that a possibility?
It could very well be, but I would say it's up to the parents, it's up to the young people, you know, to say, look, we're not happy with this, lads.
Then we're in trouble.
No,
then we're in trouble.
I don't know that you are. I don't know that you are, because I think this goes very deep. My impression is very deep. I think it's universal. I think it's like everybody I talk to lots of young people. They're all saying the same thing. They're all very cross, very angry, very concerned. They want the best, and they're not getting it. That's it. They're not getting it.
They can't find.
They're not going to put up a second best anymore.
Well, if they can't find the proper vehicle, and maybe it is going towards sponsors or whatever, but if they can't find the proper vehicle, I guess what I'm asking is what teeth are there, and ultimately the FAI will decide its own fate, is what I'm hearing. Yeah,
but I think myself, the power of public opinion, like it's like, and I'm not, you know, some countries they have governments in power for a long, long time, and the people are rising up against them, and then suddenly they're all gone. Suddenly they're gone. I'm not suggesting that they're a fascist organisation, but you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
You know the way, like the sign, writing is on the wall, guys. You know, but I mean, clearly, obviously, cogent articulation of arguments, Oireachtas people doing the best they can.
Yeah.
Continuous, you know, attention to these details, campaigns in the press, you know, clarity and transparency and accountability. What's wrong with being accountable? What's wrong with young people?
Yeah.
What's wrong with putting new guys on the board? There's nothing wrong with it.
The last question, and answer it in 30 seconds because your taxi's outside. When will we see the FAI before the committee again?
I'd say soon. We have the Minister and Sports Ireland next week.
Yeah.
And I think that our committee are still anxious to pursue issues.
And if they turn up and John Delaney still says legally I'm precluded, the Grant Thornton report isn't ready and Mazars isn't ready either?
Well, we will have developments. I mean, they did promise information which was requested today, and there will be other things that will emerge, I've no doubt as well.
Okay.
So thank you for having me on.
Until Tuesday, you have to go. Other media appearances.
Thank you very much.
Fergus O'Dowd, Chair of the committee. Thank you.
Okay, Slán.
Back in just a
Thank you.
moment.
Bye-bye, and thanks. Thanks for having me on. Good stuff, lads.
Well done.
Football on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by BoyleSports. Now with same-day withdrawals to your Visa debit card.
Down to business.
Your town, your main street comes to the sunny southeast when we broadcast from Green Acres in the heart of Wexford Town on Saturday, April 13th. We'll be giving Wexford Town a health check with a panel of experts and talking to all businesses there, big and small. We'll speak to Wexford hurling and now business legend Liam Griffin, and I'll go out to Rosslare Harbour to see what Brexit might mean out there. The event is free, but you do need a ticket, so simply go to newstalk.com/events to register.
Your town, your main street.
On Down to Business.
Live from Wexford Town, proudly sponsored by IE Domain Registry, Saturday 13th of April.
On News Talk.
The Audi Approved Plus used car sales event is now on. Discover your premium used Audi today with a 12-month warranty and exclusive 3.9% APR, available only at your local authorised Audi dealer. It doesn't have to be new to be everything you've dreamed of. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement and subject to lending criteria. Deposit required. Terms and conditions apply. Volkswagen Bank GmbH Branch Ireland is authorised by the Federal Financial Supervisory Authority in Germany and regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland for conduct of business rules. Visit audi.ie/used cars.
The big Easter sale is on now at appliancesdelivered.ie with up to 40% off the entire range, which means that I can roll out my eggiest Easter puns, like cracking offers, extreme savings and shocking deals. Okie dokie, there's €100 off a Whirlpool 9kg washing machine, now just $399. The Dyson V10 Absolute, only $499. Or the Samsung 40-inch UHD TV was $549, now $399. And there's free delivery on selected products. Start saving now at appliancesdelivered.ie.
It can take just seconds to lose everyone you love. Seconds to see your life destroyed before your eyes. Hannah had a home and family once, but it was ripped away from her. No time to escape, no time to hide. The war in Syria taking everything away from her. But this Lent, you can help change the life of Syrians like Hannah. Donate now on trocra.org or call 1-850-408-408. Trocra, until love conquers fear.
Our world turns on small choices that make a huge difference. Like bio-LPG, a new energy for homes and businesses only from Caller. Bio-LPG is 100% renewable and works like regular Calor gas, but it cuts emissions by at least 50%, keeping the world turning for future generations. Something we're very proud of at Calor, and a choice you'll be proud of too. Calor Bio LPG, a small choice that changes everything. See calorgas.ie.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Yeah, welcome back. Latest from Old Trafford. It's Manchester United 0, Barcelona 1. Barcelona on the attack. They've been on top of this game, but still just the one goal to show for it. Meanwhile, in Amsterdam, it's Ajax 1, Juventus 1. If you're just tuning in, we had Fergus O'Dowd, chair of the Oireachtas Committee, in with us over the last 20 minutes or so. The headline news, I suppose, would be that he called on the entire FAI board and John Delaney to resign, and was unequivocal about that. He said John Tracy and Sport Ireland will be back in front of the committee on Tuesday alongside Shane Ross, and then the plan is to have the FAI back in very, very soon. Dan McDonald, I'm being told, is on the line. Dan, you're there?
Evening, lads. How are things?
Well, that was a long day.
That was a marathon, Joe. Yeah, I'm sort
who's your favourite Oireachtas Committee member?
I think Jonathan O'Brien came in as a very important substitute after lunch.
Mm-hmm.
I think he definitely brought something to proceedings. I don't know. Like, I was there all day and I was in the middle of it the whole day. And sometimes, proximity to something gives you more insight, and sometimes it means you're almost, you have less, in the sense that you're almost interested to hear other opinions and how people felt it went, because you have your own ideas, but maybe for a TV audience it was a bit different, But I have to say, like, it was sort of probably a frustrating exercise for the morning, but I felt that the afternoon session was very, very informative.
I mean, it's funny that we speculated for much of the past week as to whether John Delaney would turn up and say that he was precluded from answering any questions. And I thought maybe at a stretch he might say that about the €100,000 loan. I did find it very surprising that he elected not to answer any questions in relation to his previous role as CEO for the past 14 years. The atmosphere in the room as that realisation dawned on all Oireachtas Committee members?
I think you could sense that there was probably members of the committee that were pretty frustrated, and even just in terms of almost trying to craft a match report of the day almost for the paper, that it's one of these things that if you left at half time, you would have thought that this was a masterstroke, in the sense that it probably shifted the attention to other members of the FAI team who were there taking questions that really, were questions that you would have expected to be directed towards John Delaney. But I think as the day went on, that strategy became more of a problem, and it actually probably became more of a negative compared to earlier on, where maybe it was a bit of a positive, in the sense that it was taking some of the heat off and exposing the essential weakness of the committee in this circumstance, which I think has been acknowledged and was very evident to viewers. But I think that as the day went on, perhaps, and as the questions were shifted towards other members of the FAI delegation, questions that seemed to prompt a degree of confusion or uncertainty, I think then the sort of the spectre of John Delaney being there and not really saying anything, I don't think it was a good look.
So Sport Ireland are going to come back on the Tuesday, and I presume at that stage we'll get more information about why they've elected to withdraw funding, which could be pivotal in all of this. Fergus O'Dowd just there, as I said, called on the FAI board and John Delaney to resign. But ultimately, and we teased it out with him, the FAI could conceivably continue without Sport Ireland funding. They have a big enough turnover to do so and be masters of their own destiny.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big enough turnover, although I'm not sure if there's a big enough surplus, in terms of, being able to find the room in their own internal budgets and their internal revenue streams to suddenly, they can continue, but it obviously means that some worthy projects Sport Ireland funding goes towards, they won't be able to proceed. So they either have to find that money from somewhere else, or they have to plan ahead without those particular initiatives. So I don't think there's a positive to that. Yet they could try and do it. But, they could, but I don't think they can realistically. Again, I always go back to this FAI, their governance review. They can't really bring in a new CEO and have them interviewed, in May, June, July, talking about how actually, how are things? Are you looking forward to your new job? And by the way, the government still are suspending funding. So that's not necessarily new wave that you would like.
Yeah.
So they can go ahead with it, but I'm not sure if it's necessarily going to be effective.
Yeah, Dan, it's interesting. Or one of the lines from Padraig O'Cady was interesting today. He said, if you're down to 100 grand with 50 million turnover, I'd be very worried, you know, in reference to where they were in 2017. So that makes me wonder if the tap is cut off, how you're going to cope. And it's interesting on like Jonathan O'Brien's questioning, which was zoned in on the bridging loan and what this loan was for. And Mark Daly, after he got over his happy buzz in the morning, got on to this later on, and he actually was quite good on it and the way he pressed him on it. I thought the silence said a lot as well. They were very, very uncomfortable with the question, the FAI, the FAI president, Mr. Conway. And they didn't really want to answer it. Was that the impression that they really didn't want to get into that at all?
Yeah, there was just, we had a phase in the afternoon where, and I guess this was probably visible on the stream, but maybe you were looking at the person who was asking the questions. But, you know, when questions were posed, there was a lot of discussions on the FAI, certain questions, when Jonathan O'Brien in particular, and a couple of the members went down the route, say, of the bank accounts, the UEFA prize money, stuff that necessarily is going to grab headlines because it didn't deliver money, you know, pardon the pun, a sort of a money shot in terms of an answer. But you could sense on the FAI side of things. I mean, Alex O'Connell, their new finance director, was brought forward from the back row to be brought to the top table. We had the confusion. You know, Eddie Murray, the treasurer, was maybe finding it hard to answer certain specific questions and was looking to other people around him for clarification and support. And there was a line of questioning there that almost ended up the FAI playing the card that, listen, we're here to talk about public funding. You know, this is what we're here to talk about. It's not to do with maybe how other funds are allocated or distributed. But it was noticeable that there was no. I guess they were quite prepared, I think, for a lot of the questions in the morning. I think it would be fair to acknowledge that. They didn't seem to be particularly ready for some of the stuff that came their way afterwards, when maybe the entire delegation was tested. Yeah. And that was something I think that really did shine a light on the FAI, just aspects of the FAI's governance, which I think it's right to be a bit concerned or to be a bit unimpressed by.
And you've also the situation when you have the Jonathan Hall report, Grant Thornton and Mazar's reports as well. And there's a huge cost factor involved there in an organisation that suddenly funding has been cut off, and that you would think sponsors would be looking at as well. Well,
they were asked, and at one point, is it tens of thousands? Is it hundreds of thousands? And all Donald Conway could say was, well, we think it will be worth it. But he didn't want to give a figure. He argued it was commercially sensitive, and that's one of those great terms you can use regularly in these instances. We did learn some information. Again, I'm conscious there's probably a new audience joining us on the radio. Podcast listeners will have got the full hour between 7 and 8. But we did learn about the loan in a bit more depth. Not nearly enough, I appreciate. But we did learn, for instance, that only 3 board members knew about it, Dan.
Yeah, and I think that was obviously the significance that was apparent in the statement on Monday night, on Monday afternoon, that the previous FAI statements may not have accurately reflected the board knowledge, and what we got was the extent of that, and the extent that only 3 members of the board, as they were in 2017. Tony Fitzgerald, the president, is now no longer a member of the board, and actually either is John Delaney, but at the time 3 members of the FAI, only they were aware, in addition to 2 members of FAI staff. So again, you had this long situation where Donald Conway was taking a lot of the questions on the FAI and the issue of the €100,000 loan, but he wasn't aware of it, and I had to concede that he didn't become aware of it until March the 4th of this year. So that in itself, I mean, and then Eddie Murray, the treasurer, was brought in, another member who wasn't aware of it, and Padraig Traynor, another board member, was there, and he also wasn't aware of it. So you had a number of board members there, some of whom were taking questions on this that weren't aware of it, and the only member of the board at the time who was aware of the loan that was there was John Delaney, but he wasn't taking any further questions beyond his statement. Yeah. So that in itself highlighted a certain there was a sort of a comic element to aspects of that, except for the fact that really it's not a laughing matter in the context of broader Irish football questions, and people maybe tuning into this maybe feeling a bit disillusioned.
Yeah, Catherine Murphy at the time said that was extraordinary. She said you managed it out of sight, and Declan Conway said, no, we just managed it, and maybe it wasn't the best way to manage the situation. So I don't really know where it goes from her, or from there rather, because there were a number of promises on a number of issues that we'll get back to you. You know, the FAI were saying we'll have to find that information and we'll send that back to you, and that happened numerous times, and then there's just huge swathes of questions they just can't answer. So John Tracy and Shane Ross before the committee on Tuesday, Dan.
Yeah, that seems to be next up in terms of formal engagement. And I mean, I did listen to Fergus O'Dowd with you there at the end of your piece of Fergus O'Dowd there. We suggested the FAI might come back in soon. Now, I'm trying to ascertain that earlier. I mean, the FAI aren't necessarily obliged to come back in again if they're asked, but obviously, not coming in wouldn't be a great strategy either. So it is sort of hard to figure out what way it's going to go, and you can't really put yourself into the shoes of other people and sort of predict what course of action they might take. My only feeling would be that I think in the circumstances I can't see Sport Ireland changing their stance on suspending funding anytime soon on the basis of whatever answers were received today. I think that situation was probably going to remain for some time, and we'll see. I mean, obviously, Robert Troy did put specific questions to Donald Conway about would the board be prepared to step down if that was the condition. Now, I don't think Sport Ireland really has the ability, the authority to ask an FAI board to do that, but I suppose we'll see what other kind of pressure externally is applied, and that probably does call in other people in Irish football and see what their opinion is. There might be people out there, as you know, we've received statements who see no problem at all with anything today. But I noticed there was a statement from a group of supporters clubs there in the last couple of minutes who would normally be associated as maybe being quite positive about the current FAI, the Confederation of Supporters Clubs, who didn't seem entirely happy with today, right, without saying much more on top of that. And that's only a little thing, really, but I think the response from the wider Irish football community over the next couple of days is going to be interesting, because Irish football is front and centre again, and probably not for great reasons.
What was John Delaney's demeanour like, Dan? Effectively off the ball when we couldn't see him on camera? Because I did catch a couple of times he was kind of rolling his eyes, and there was a look he gave Eddie Murray, the honorary treasurer, at one stage as well, when he said something I don't think he particularly liked him saying. What was what did you make of Delaney's demeanour?
Yeah, it's sort of a mixed bag. I mean, certainly in terms of any time he was going in and out of the room, very confident in terms of his exterior, in the sense of the odd, addressing the odd person on the way out by name. There was a moment where in the last break, Padraig O'Cady actually helped bring in a group of school children from Dundalk who were on a tour, and they were allowed to just have a look at the room in the break, and John Delaney came back in as they were there and shook hands with them all on the way and exchanged the odd joke. And so generally, he put on a fairly relaxed show for large parts of it. But as I said, in the afternoon, as the silence became more perhaps damaging at certain points, maybe you could sense that he wasn't maybe as relaxed as he was previously. And there were times when questions were asked and you could sort of sense that he was maybe trying to turn to other people, and on occasion, help them to some degree, or maybe suggesting that other people are asked certain questions or whatever it might be. So he got a small bit more involved in terms of the order of answering questions, and he did actually answer some questions from Kevin O'Keefe in the afternoon, where, as I said earlier on in the day, he was very much it was on message in terms of Conway doing most of the speaking.
Well, here's an example, and I guess we're talking about body language, so it doesn't quite work, but people might hear it in the tone of voice, where Imelda Munster, this is in the afternoon session, which definitely was tetchy or fair, got into an exchange with John Delaney. It was one of the few times someone really tried to just engage him and snap him out of this "I'm precluded from talking" guys.
Can I just say, just my observation, Chair, I think, that the former CEO has behaved disgracefully today. I mean, he came in with a last-minute statement. He knows the procedures for this committee. He's furnished us with the statement, but refusing to answer any questions in relation to the statement. And he's also refusing to answer questions that are ongoing in relation to his time as CEO. And I would have imagined it's an absolute disgrace, and it's been farcical what's gone on here. But the only good thing is that the public out there have witnessed it firsthand too. And I would have thought that anybody would have been glad to be handed the opportunity to put the record straight. But you haven't taken up that opportunity, Mr. Delaney.
I know what your
Is there a reason why you haven't?
No, I know what your comments, Deputy Muster.
But is there a reason you haven't?
No, I've read my statement, as you know.
And you see, that struck me as a real misstep on John Delaney's part, because he's passive-aggressive there. If looks could kill, I know this is radio. Whereas what he should have said there is something along the lines of, I can appreciate your frustration. I would love nothing more than to talk to everybody here in full frankness, but I've taken legal advice and you have to respect that, and I appreciate you're looking for answers. I can't quite give them to you yet, and on and on and on, etc. But actually, there was a real bit of needle there, and there was a kind of steel in his gaze there, and it didn't do him any favours in the context of the lack of answers from the FAI generally.
Yeah, no, it was definitely tense at that point, and as I say, almost that was when we'd gone beyond the stage of maybe, maybe the committee members in the morning had a series of questions and specific questions they wanted to ask John Delaney. They were getting nowhere with that. So really, just by mid-afternoon, they reached that point where it was almost a sense of trying to just offer opinion and comment, and almost try and shame the visitors to some degree. In the sense of, well, why is this so unsatisfactory? So that was the change in tone, as I said. That was the change in the mood across the afternoon. That as the questions began to pose a few more problems, there came a stage where you had to turn to John Delaney, I guess, from their perspective. And yeah, it wasn't a question. I mean, last week, Imelda Munster had a soundbite that was revolved around questions. There was no scope for questions this time, really. It was just more comment. I mean, Michael Healy-Rae came in and gave comment, so other panellists decided to go that way, and they did so in a fairly pointed manner.
Yeah, okay. I think you're in tomorrow with Nathan, so we'll have more time to digest everything and go through it again. Dan, we'll leave you go in the meantime.
See you, Joe.
Cheers. Dan McDonald, Irish Independent. Final thoughts from myself and Kieran in a moment, and we'll give you the full time when it comes in from Old Trafford. At the moment, 90th minute, it's still Barcelona leading Manchester United by a goal to nil, and in Amsterdam, still 1-0.
Off the ball on News Talk.
The lowest prices guaranteed, the fastest delivery nationwide, and hassle-free installation. Start saving now at appliancesdelivered.ie.
Oh, hello, love. I see you've turned our shed into a space station.
It's my research bunker.
Of course.
Where I track every price fluctuation and cross-reference geopolitical events to anticipate promotional offers.
Right, well, if I could just get the lawnmower.
And I'm close, Peter. I'm close to finding the way to save on car insurance.
But I've already done that. I went to 123.ie and saved 10%, no hassle at all.
Oh, I might get out of here then. I think the spiders have made a nest in my hair.
Simple is smarter. Get 10% off new car insurance when you buy online at 123.ie. Acceptance criteria, T's and C's apply. 123 Money Limited trading as 123.ie is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. RSA Insurance Ireland Act provides 123.ie car insurance.
And it all comes down to this. The winning parts of the Dubai Duty-Free Irish Open.
Come experience all the excitement of this year's Dubai Duty-Free Irish Open at the spectacular Lahinch Golf Course from the 3rd to the 7th of July. Watch the drama unfold as Larry, Fleetwood and Harrington take to this dramatic and challenging links course. Experience more with a fantastic festival of golf, live music and delicious food and drink. DubaiDutyFreeIrishOpen.com.
The Masters is back. Stream all 4 days from Augusta and get every second of big swinging, glorious setting, career besting, water splashing, record breaking, tiger taming, Rory winning, maybe, eagle making, green jacketing, golf glory you could ask for. Grab a Now TV Sky Sports Week Pass and watch all 4 days of the Masters for just €15. Search Now TV today. Content streamed via the internet. Full terms at nowtv.com.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Welcome back. We're on. So, 2 minutes gone, and it's Barcelona leading Manchester United by 1-0, 3 minutes of added time, and in Amsterdam, still 1-1. Our out time, 3.5 minutes, Kieran. That's what we have here.
Okay.
To reflect on today, which surprised me, I must say, because, as I said to Dan in various conversations, the Sunday paper review, half wondered if John Delaney might turn up and say, sorry, everyone, I'm pleading the fifth. And the ubiquitous response was, no, he couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Couldn't do that. And for 6 hours, he did it today. What's your sense of this whole thing? How much trouble are the FAI board in? How much trouble is John Delaney in? I'm still absolutely unconvinced that their end is nigh.
I wouldn't say I'm convinced, but I think they are in trouble. I think what Sport Ireland did yesterday is such a major move, and it's something like, if you know John Tracy, it's not like, it's clearly, it's not just John Tracy's decision, but he would have a lot of power in Sport Ireland, and he's quite a. He doesn't do something like that lightly.
No, Kieran Mulvey strikes me as an even-tempered man as well.
Yeah. No, they don't take a move like that. Like, this is, this is a massive sport. It is the biggest global sport, and it's a massive sport in the Irish context in terms of participation and in following, etc. Excuse me. And they know this will impact on people at the grassroots that keeps being mentioned. It could affect people in a very negative way that they don't want to affect. But they clearly felt they'd no choice.
Something happened.
Yeah, something happened. And also I find, like, we watched it all today, so a lot of other people just see little clips on the news or in this show or YouTube channel, etc. But when you watch, the optics were very bad for the FAI when you watched a lot of it.
Yeah.
Like, they did come across as evasive, and
it was a weird mixture of evasiveness or actual, you could argue, incompetence, like not knowing how many bank accounts they have.
Yeah.
And estimating it was one, the treasurer, and then actually it turning out there were 24.
Yeah, and also there were questions put to them in advance, and they were asked, and Donald Conway, the president, said, "Oh, we'll get back to you on that tomorrow." And they'd been told this in advance, and they would have had a fair idea what they were going to be asked today. So they should have had the information, and they were asked again and again by different people, what was this loan for? And nobody would give the answer. That's a key question. So
we will see how it plays out. John Tracy and Minister Shane Ross in front of the Oireachtas Committee on Tuesday, and then Fergus O'Dowd saying here that he expects the FAI to be back in front of the Oireachtas Committee soon, was the word he used. And he also said specifically John Delaney and everybody in the FAI board should resign. Was a line from his appearance this evening. If you didn't catch the first hour of the show and you want a pretty good sense of the Oireachtas Committee meeting this afternoon, the full 6-7 hours, then we spent basically the first hour of the show playing out good lengthy segments and putting the whole thing into context. So that is available to download if you so wish. It's gone full time at Old Trafford, and it's finished 1-0 to Barcelona. In Amsterdam, it's finished 1-1 Ajax and Juventus. We're pretty much done for this evening. OTB AM back tomorrow 7:45. You're on all our social media streams. More reaction to today's hearing, more in the Champions League, and then Nathan back on the radio 7 o'clock. John Giles and Kieran Molloy along for that. Tom Dunn on the way next.